Hey people of the class, this is lesson 3 called European Explorers. So this is part of 1.3. We are going to talk about some more of the explorers that began exploring the Americas after Columbus founded the Americas on accident, as we talked about in the last lesson. So just remember that as you go, you're going to complete your guided notes. Pause if you need to, rewatch if you don't understand as you fill out your guided notes. The success criteria for today is I will be able to research and teach about a European explorer. Okay, so first of all, as we have learned about in detail, there was a great demand for Asian goods. And so because of this, because people still want these goods that are over in Asia and India and the Middle East, they're trying to find better routes because going over land takes a long time. It's long, it's expensive, as we talked about last time with the Silk Road. As it goes through these countries, it picks up taxes and other fees that you'd have to pay. And so by the time you get it back to Europe, it is really expensive. So they begin trying to find these other routes. The country of Portugal kind of begins this exploration, followed by Spain and then other countries. So first of all, remember, their goal is to get over here to Asia, to India, China, that area. And so they start by trying to get around the tip of Africa. And it takes them a little while. There's a couple people that attempt it and aren't able to make it. And then finally, they are able to make it around the coast of Africa. Bartholomew Diaz makes it around the coast of Africa. Now this is good. This is a sea route, but as you can tell on the map here, it is still a pretty long route. And it still takes quite a while. So there's still yet other explorers that begin to try to find other routes. So we have here the Spanish conquistadors. So conquistador means conqueror. So that should kind of think about what that means, okay, when we talk about Spanish conquistadors, Spanish conquerors. So after Columbus accidentally finds America, runs into the Bahamas, and they start exploring the coast a little bit, other explorers start to come over there. And the Spanish really are one of the main countries that explore over in the Americas. They explore the Caribbean, Central and South America. Some really important Spanish explorers, I guess important in the sense that they had a huge impact on history, is one Pizarro. So Pizarro conquered the great Inca Empire in Peru. So Peru is on the western side of South America, and they were a great civilization, like Machu Picchu was part of that civilization. And Pizarro and only about 200 and roughly 250, 260 men go to this Inca Empire where there is hundreds of thousands of them, and they're able to capture the leader of the Inca, and then they put a ransom on him, and they end up getting a whole bunch of riches and gold from the Inca, roughly worth $50 million today. And then, get this, Pizarro, even after getting that ransom, still kills the leader of the Inca Empire. And eventually they have conquered that empire. Just 260 men. Because they had armor, they had guns, things that the Inca had never seen before. Cortez is another explorer, and he conquers the Aztecs in Mexico. Again, greatly outnumbered, but because they have more technology with armor and guns, they're able to conquer the Aztecs in Mexico. Okay, so just look at this map for a minute. These are some of the explorations over to the Americas from Europe. And if we go to this, so here's the question. According to the map, what country had the most explorations between 1500 and 1550? So maybe pause it and look at that. And if you said Spain, then you are correct. Spain had the most explorations according to this map. Next question. According to the map, which explorer sailed near the coast of present-day California? Pause it and look at that. And if you said Cabrillo, I think that's how you pronounce it, you would be correct. He sailed near the coast of present-day California. Okay, so let's talk about the impact on the Native Americans. Okay, this is from Edmund Morgan, a historian, written in 2010. So this would be a secondary source. This is not a primary source. He says, speaking of the Indians and the Native Americans, they were tortured, burned, and fed to the dogs by their masters. They died from overwork and from new European diseases. They killed themselves, and they took pains to avoid having children. Life was not fit to live, and they stopped living. From a population of 100,000 at the lowest estimate in 1492, there remained in 1514 about 32,000 Arawaks in Hispaniola. By 1542, according to Las Casas, we're going to talk about him in a minute, only 200 were left. In their place, slaves were imported from Africa. So just think about that. Okay, 1492, there's about 100,000 of this tribe. So 1514, there was only 32,000. And then by 1542, so 50 years after Columbus, there was only 200 left. Okay, Bartholomew de las Casas was a Spanish monk. Okay, so he is part of the Catholic Church, and he comes over to the Americas. And this is what he says. Keep in mind, he's a Spanish monk. He's from Spain. He says, the Spanish have destroyed such an infinity of souls in their search for gold. We're going to read this from De las Casas, okay? So feel free to pause it or whatever you need to do to make sure you understand this. He says, after the wars and the killings had ended, when usually there survived only some Native American boys, some women and children, these survivors were distributed among the Spanish conquistadors to be slaves. And the care they took was to send the men to the mines to dig for gold, which is intolerable labor, and to send the women into the fields of the ranches to hoe and till the land, work suitable for strong men. Nor to either the men or the women did they give any food except herbs and legumes, things of little substance, so they lacked nutrition. The milk of the women with infants dried up, and thus in a short while the infants perished. And since men and women were separated, there could be no marital relations, and the men died in the mines, and the women died on the ranches from the same causes, exhaustion and hunger. And thus was depopulated that island, which had been densely populated. Okay, so the question after reading that is, according to De las Casas, why did many Native Americans become extinct? According to the primary source here. So maybe a good thing to do right now would be to pause this and look and see if you can find answers to that question. Okay, so let's look first right here. It says they took care, and the care they took was to send the men to the mines to dig for gold, and the women, okay, to the ranches. So they basically separate the men and the women. and they're doing really difficult, hard labor. So I would say that would be one thing that contributed to that. Mostly the fact they're doing hard labor and they're separated. Also, it says here they didn't give any food except herbs and legumes. So things of little substance, he says. So things that didn't give them the nutrition they needed. So that would be another reason. The milk of the women with infants dried up, so they couldn't feed the children, the babies. And the babies died. And then since the men and the women were separated, like we talked about, then there were no new babies. And so the men died where they were working, the women died where they were working, and you can see how that can basically lead to extinction and how many of the Native Americans were killed and died. It wasn't necessarily from being killed, like murdered, although it does say at the beginning that there were some killings, okay, when the wars and killings had ended. Okay, but then the rest of it was from the way they're treated, their conditions, their nutrition, and no new babies. So, I mean, this whole lesson, I guess, is a little sad and depressing. What happened with the Spanish conquistadors and what happened with the Native Americans is sad, and we have a lot of primary sources that talk about the horrible things that went on. But I think it's important to still learn about these things. Remember, we don't want to shy away from even the sad or the bad in history, but we can learn from them, learn from these experiences.